Ryan, what's on your radar?
So Heather Bresch, the former president and CEO of the drug maker Mylan, worked directly with the CEO of Pfizer to keep prices of the company's EpiPen product artificially high. That's according to new documents released as part of an ongoing lawsuit. The documents also show Bresch, who is the daughter of West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, approving a scheme to force customers captured by the company's monopoly to purchase 2 EpiPens at once, regardless of medical need. The EpiPen is an auto-injectable device that injects epinephrine into the body and can be the difference between life or death for a person suffering an allergic reaction. The documents were released as part of an ongoing antitrust suit in federal court and have not been previously reported. Late last week, Judge Daniel Crabtree unsealed some of the documents underlying the plaintiff's case. Among the documents is an email sent on behalf of Bresch to her counterpart at Pfizer, then CEO Ian Reed. In the email, sent in January 2011, Bresch confirms a previous discussion with Reed in which she says that the two agreed that as part of a deal, Pfizer would divest from its EpiPen competitor, Adrenaclick. Eliminating its main competitor would then allow Mylan to continue raising its prices. In 2007, when Mylan acquired rights to market the drug from Merck by buying its subsidiary Meridian Technologies, a 2-pack cost less than $100, a tiny fraction of what it costs today. The result of the deal with Merck was that Mylan manufactured part of the EpiPen delivery system but not the medication itself, while owning the brand name and the right to distribute the whole product. The drug itself was produced by King Pharmaceuticals, which manufactured it exclusively for Mylan. King in 2010 announced it would be purchased by Pfizer, which had launched Adrenaclick, the epinephrine competitor, just the previous year. The deal between Pfizer and Mylan led the former to withdraw its competitor from the market and partner with Mylan on EpiPen, locking down a monopoly. Following the deal with Pfizer, Mylan drove the price above $600 within 5 years. Meanwhile, Gail Manchin, Bresch's mother, lobbied states to require schools to stock epinephrine as the head of the National Association of State Boards of Education. Gail Manchin was recently confirmed to serve as co-chair of the Federal Appalachian Regional Commission, which is a government agency tasked with promoting economic development across the region's 13 states. The email, sent on behalf of Bresch by her assistant, includes the subject line, "Our Discussion." She writes, quote, "I'm sending you this email as a reminder that you were to send me confirmation relative to our discussion regarding EpiPen. In that discussion, you indicated that you would be divesting your Adrenaclick product once the Pfizer-King deal closes. I understand your tender offer is closing today, so I would appreciate receiving your response as soon as possible." Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I would bet there isn't a lawyer alive who'd tell their client it was a good idea to put something like that in writing. Cutting a deal with Pfizer to divest from its competitor may be brazen enough, but to memorialize the agreement in an email produces a startling window into the ways in which corporate executives are able to manipulate markets. Bresch did not respond to a request for comment, but Mylan has consistently said that it has done nothing wrong in how it sets the prices of its EpiPens. In 2016, Bresch testified before Congress about the price increases and expressed some limited regret that some customers had paid the full list price, while noting that many others paid less due to agreements with insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers. She said, quote, "Looking back, I wish we had better anticipated the magnitude and acceleration of the rising financial issues for a growing minority of patients who may have ended up paying the full price or more. We never intended this." Amid news of the King acquisition, Mylan, according to market analyst reports at the time, was worried that Pfizer would push ahead with its generic version, its competitor, and also then cut Mylan out of the market. In 2010, EpiPen was dominant, controlling 91% of the worldwide market and 96% of the U.S. market, according to its filings with the SEC. But Adrenaclick was climbing quickly in market share. A Mylan deal with Pfizer would enrich both companies. By divesting from Adrenaclick and continuing to allow Mylan to sell the EpiPen at inflated prices, both firms would split the profits from the more expensive version, allowing Pfizer to earn more if it drove down prices with its cheaper version. With the monopoly locked down, Mylan made its next move, a plan to eliminate its single-pack EpiPen in the United States and instead require customers to purchase 2 pens at once. The monopoly had created space for the new scheme, and the new scheme created extra revenue that Mylan split with Pfizer, thus entrenching the monopoly and warding off generics. And it also set aside revenue to dole out as rebates to third parties who might complain, according to the internal correspondence. The two schemes were separate, but they were mutually reinforcing. The idea to eliminate the single pack was batted around internally in late 2010 and early 2011, according to the emails produced as part of the suit. Mylan executive Bruce Foster proposed the idea as a way to, quote, double revenue and create a, quote, strong potential generic defense. By January 2011, it had become dubbed Project X2, and executives spent the next several months executing it. The company's executives were aware there was no medical justification for the change at the outset of the project, and they sought to generate one. Ivona Kopanja, an associate project manager in Mylan's marketing and sales operations division, wrote two other employees in March 2011 telling her, quote, senior management is having a meeting with Heather April 1st and wanted to provide her with an update on Project X2. I know that you are working on creating a, quote, medical rationale for Project X2. I'm pulling a slide deck together that will be used. Would you be able to forward me the information that I should include for the rationale and the way it should be worded? In May, the company's medical professionals raised concerns that the plan did not align with medical guidance, according to an email COO Lloyd Sanders sent to Heather Bresch. But after Bresch, quote, learned that the copay that most patients pay is the same as a single as it is for a two-pack, she became very motivated to pull the singles, according to the email from Sanders that was not released publicly, but which is quoted by the judge in the recent memo. The company also conducted market research and concluded that since it was a matter of life and death, customers would suck it up and buy two pens if that was the only choice. Marketing material disclosed as part of the lawsuit includes a number of quotes from caregivers, physicians, and others making that point. By May, the emails indicate, Mylan had begun pitching Pfizer on the project, suggesting it could become a billion-dollar brand if done right. Bresch continued pushing the idea through June, and in July, the two companies met. Quote, the team met with Pfizer, wrote Sanders. They are completely on board. Mylan executives told Pfizer that the scheme would likely succeed because EpiPen revenue was, quote, below the radar for most managed care organizations, according to the judge's recent filing. The judge's order also quotes from Bresch's deposition, in which she acknowledged colluding with Pfizer, saying Mylan didn't, quote, persuade Pfizer on anything, and calling the latter company, quote, partner in the product. On August 11th, the single pack was eliminated, as the executives sat back and watched for blowback. Mylan concluded there was no, quote, need to call right FDA, as it's not necessary and will raise more questions than we have answers, according to an email quoted in the order. On August 20th, 2011, Pfizer announced it was discontinuing its EpiPen competitor. By October, Mylan moved to raise prices. Lloyd Sanders wrote to Heather Bresch, quote, Harry, Ron, Joe, Mike, and I are recommending a price increase now for EpiPen. The original plan was to increase in December or January, assuming there was no backlash from Project X2 at payers. Project X2 implementation has been without any issues. Last price increase was May 2011. No pushback on that either, Lloyd Sanders wrote. The incremental sales would be $5.5 million to $6 million, and it all drops to the bottom line, unquote. Pfizer, while denying wrongdoing, has since settled a class action suit for price fixing for $345 million over the company's practices related to the EpiPen market. A suit against Mylan, which also denies wrongdoing, is ongoing. Bresch had been named Chief Operating Officer of Mylan in October 2007, a promotion that immediately sparked a scandal when the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reported that her claim of having an executive master's degree in business from West Virginia University was false. Bresch's father, Joe Manchin, was governor at the time, and the school soon corrected the paper, saying that she had indeed obtained the degree. A subsequent investigation concluded that the initial answer had been correct. Bresch had been far short of a degree, and the university actively fabricated grades to get her over the line, leading to multiple resignations from the university's senior leadership. Manchin was elected to the Senate in 2012. His daughter officially retired from Mylan in December 2020, having sold the company to Pfizer. For years, Mylan had been a backbone of Morgantown, West Virginia's economy. But that month, Residents there woke up to some devastating news.
Just a moment, but today's top story, developing news out of Morgantown after a major employer announces the closure of a plant there. Amanda Mueller is tracking the story for us. She's live with what we know so far. Amanda, what can you tell us?
That's right, Justin. People here in Morgantown waking up to some tough economic news this morning. It turns out that the Mylan manufacturing plant here is set to close its doors permanently next year. And that announcement just came out this morning. Here is what we know so far. That means about 1,400 people will be losing their jobs. The timeline for this closure is listed as no later than July 31st, 2021. And the company says there will be no immediate employment changes as of right now. Antitrust says this is part of a global restructuring initiative. The company is closing or downsizing 15 manufacturing facilities worldwide. Mylan and Pfizer merged last year. I spoke to someone this morning whose friends and family are affected by this closure, and they didn't want to go on camera, but they did tell me this is terrible news for Morgantown. Reporting for 12 News in Morgantown.
Bresh herself walked away with a $37.6 million exit package. I don't know, Robbie. What do we do about all this?
Wow, it's a mess. That's a great story. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. You know what I'm struck by as you were laying this out for us is, medical, the cost of drugs, medical care is so confusing because, as you pointed out, it's a lot of the people, the people getting the EpiPen, they paid maybe a copay for it or something like that. The cost is disguised to them. It's the insurance company paying it. So people have no idea what these things actually cost. When you later go, if you look through your bill and you see, wow, these things cost exorbitant amounts of money that I could never pay by myself. So the whole conversation about how we should handle healthcare, it takes place in a world where most people really just don't understand what these things cost, what they'd be willing to pay for it if they actually had to pay the cost. The disguising the cost of a thing is such a problem, and it allows these bad actors, these people who are trying to, game the system, squeeze people, use kind of government regulation in a way that very much benefits them and hurts competitors. It just allows them to get away with it because for the public, it's actually legitimately hard to follow what is both the necessity and the cost of these things.
Yeah, there really is no transparency around this stuff. Yeah, Kim, go ahead.
Well, price transparency only works if there's actually competition.
Right.
And in this particular instance, there's no competition. They were able to whittle it down to one option for patients, and the price skyrocketed. In the course of a decade, it went from on average about $100 to over $700 for these EpiPens, and lives were lost. So it's. This whole thing, this whole story, I think really sheds light on the fact that we do need government regulation on this. Obviously, with the father being Joe Manchin, it kind of raises some questions on what is, again, the marriage between Congress and these big industries. Of course, in this case, it's father-daughter relationship. But nonetheless, it just goes to show that, there's a lack of will inside of Congress to step in on both sides of the aisle to step in and actually regulate the pharmaceutical industry. Pharma pays a bunch of money to lobbyists and campaign donations. They're one of the largest advertisers on our mainstream media channels. So it's really hard to combat them. There's not a lot of will by the powers that be to go in and regulate them, and they desperately need to be regulated.
And you understand why, seeing a story like this, you can understand why some people are hesitant about things like vaccines, and I'm very pro-vaccine, but you see an email, we're going in search of the medical rationale to get this drug, recommended in schools and things. That makes people understandably skeptical that all of this stuff is necessary. And then it's like a boy who cried wolf problem. Then when it is necessary, you have people who are doubtful because of things like this.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the cornerstones, actually, of the reconciliation package that Democrats are pushing through right now, and that Joe Manchin is saying that they need to take a strategic pause on, has as at its center allowing Medicare to negotiate over drug prices. So it'll be interesting to see, how energetically he continues to oppose this. I don't think having Medicare negotiate over drug prices is the most important thing you could do with regard to the drug industry, but having that extra pressure and having that extra sunlight on the industry, I think would be at minimum useful to find out what's going on. Because I think the fact that they were putting all of this stuff in emails like this suggests that this is not unusual. You know, if they felt like they were doing something wildly out of the norm, they would have taken it aside and let's just talk about this and not put it. Let's not do PowerPoints that we call Project X2. But,
right.
Kim, looking forward to your radar next.